Hi, this is Bonnie, and today I'm going to be working on a Christmas card with stamping and die cuts. And first I'm going to show you what the colors that have inspired me is from this paper. And this is called Fairy Hugs FrostFlight. And so the colors in here, they're not really bold. They're a little bit more muted to what I'm going to be using. And the colors I'm going to be using from that are these papers that I just had in my stash. This is kind of like a chipboard gray. And then this has got kind of like a purple, I can't really see it, but it's got a purpley gray look to it. It really goes well with this paper. And then I'm also going to be using that type of a green. So those are the papers. Oh, and I'm also going to be using craft paper. So those are the papers, and this is what the starting point is for me. And then I'm going to be using Fairy Hugs Enchanted Dies, the Magical Hollow, and that is this die. It's fairly large. And I am going to be using some Fairy Hug stamps, and I am going to be using the Pinecones. I'm going to be using the sentiment Love at Christmas. And I'm going to be using, for sure, the berries in this set. It's a thank you set from Fairy Hugs. And I might possibly use that foliage too. We'll see how it goes. I've not made this card before, so it's going to be new even to me. The other thing I'm going to use is a die from Tutti Designs. And this one's called Cones and Branches. And I'm going to be using the branches to go with the die that I'm using from Fairy Hugs. So I'm going to go ahead and get some things prepared, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the die cut out. That is the Magical Hollow, and I'm kind of like using it for a wreath. And then I am using the Tutti Designs branches for needle, whatever you want to call it, for branches for the one side. Because there was a little opening on this side, and I'm covering that up. I'm going to show you how I'm taking this away and putting it back on. Then the other plan is I'm going to use the berries, which is what I told you from the thank you set. So what I wanted to do before I adhere any of the dies down is I want to have an idea of where I want this and where I want these put, because I want to stamp the sentiment and I want to stamp these berries. So in order to do that, I'm going to kind of like just technically put these on about where I'm going to have them. They're going to be a little bit different. They aren't going to hang over the edge as much. I do have space along the edge for them to hang when I go to put them on the card. So I want to put this in first. This will help me understand where those are all going to go. And I think I have that balanced. Whoops. I have that balanced where it's going to go. I know that's hanging over some of those branch needles right now, but they're not going to when I get that on. Okay, so that's like where I want the sentiment to go. I am going to use VersaFine Clear Nocturne, and I'm put these back in there and do the berries. So, because I want a little bit of each. I want to have the dies and I want to have the stamps. I want to have that variety on my card. So I know the sentiment is going to go there, like I said. And that's perfect for what I want. And then I'm going to put this back on again, because that's kind of like my template for knowing where to put the berries. And I want that to be centered in there. And they're roughly going to go there. You would think that if I put these on, it would be great. I don't really trust the height of the dies to get a good stamp. So that is why I am not gluing these down first. But I do really want to know where to put the berries. And I think what I might do is just temporarily put a little piece of tape so they don't move around too much, so I can keep lifting them up and figuring out where I want them to go. So that will work for me, I think. I can see one other piece I need to tape down. It's not going to hurt that at all. So I think that'll work. All right. So I know now, because that's going to be like that, I'm going to put the berries there for one. Move that out of the way. It looks a little fiddly. It's not that bad. And I move these because I've kind of like got these taped how I'm going to put them down, as you can see. And for that, I think I'm going to use a different color. I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to use, I hope I'm not mistaken, I think I'm going to use the VersaFine Rainforest because it's got a little bit of a blue cast to it. And the background paper does too. So let's try that first. I think it's not gonna show a lot, and even the color probably won't show a whole lot. Yeah, it really doesn't. So it's gonna be okay, I think. And then I can color these berries in also. And that I'll probably use this color to color in the berries so it ties in together. All right, so again, I have to put this back on so I can get an idea of where I want the rest of the berries. And I gotta take my time. So you can see I kind of like have berries underneath there. It's not really, it's very subtle. I think I'm gonna put some here too. So we'll get that on. So this will probably be the only part that'll be really fiddly, is figuring out where I want the berries. Now, if you are really good at fussy cutting, you could have stamped these and fussy cut them in there, but I think this is the easier way to go. All right, so I'm putting this back on again. I know that's like where I want those to be. I think as long as that's in the center, and it's pretty good with the, I'll make sure that's centered. And I've got this back over here. Whoops, it does get stuck on these. I think that will look okay. Yep, okay. I think I'm going to have something coming right here, so I'm not really too worried about the berries being there too. But I do know I want to balance it off with it being up at the top. Now these face a different direction, but it'll still work. I'm trying to look to see how I want that to go. I think that'll still work okay like that. All right. I didn't want to get ink on my dies, so that's why I kind of pulled it that way and I didn't push it all the way down. All right. I think you could actually make a wreath just, stamping if you want to also, but that works. All right, one more time, I think. So I think I'm just going to do the 4. That's going to work. You can kind of see that there. See if it needs to be up here at the top. I don't know that it really does. I want it to go kind of like in the same direction. But I don't know that it's going to show if I do. I think I'm just going to go that way. Just so I have something up there in the corner. That works. All right, so that will be the fussiest part of this card, I think. We've got that all set up. All right, so the next thing that I did stamp, I'm going to move this out of the way and show you, is I did stamp the pine cones, and I stamped them on the craft paper, and I used Pinecone ink from VersaFine Clear. So what I'm going to do with these, because I've already got the brown for the background, I can add color if I want to, but I think I'll do anything. I'll add gold to the tips. But I'm going to cut these out. I'm going to fussy cut those out, and I'm going to put those on my card as well. So I'm going to fussy cut those out, and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm all set to get this put together. It's not put together yet, but I've laid out the pine cones. I've cut each one of them out, as you can see. So I'm going to just slide that over to the side a second. It's not attached. So I have some idea of how I want to put that back together. All right, so obviously that's going to go like that. But I want to get those berries colored. And I'm going to use 2 Prismacolor pencils. And I probably really should have sharpened this one really quickly. Seeing as I'm coloring in a smaller area, it helps to have a pointed pencil sharpened, but of course mine doesn't want to sharpen. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I should have had that prepared. So I've used 2 colors. This one is Violet Imperial. It's 1007. And this one is 1008. And so technically I should have sharpened that too. I'm going to use the darker color towards the back like it's a shadow. And again, this is not a really big deal other than I should have sharpened it. So I'm kind of like thinking this is not really twirly the shadow the right way. But try to think of it, the underneath part, but because of how that berry has that part, I didn't do it that way. So each one gets a dark layer at the bottom or where the light would not hit it as well. Again, this is not perfect. And then I'm taking the next one, which is the 1008, the lighter color, and I'm just coming back in there. I guess it's not that light. And I'm coming back in there and coloring those in. I think this color isn't too matchy, so it does pop a little bit, so you do actually see it. Because if I was taught by my daughter, who was an art student, that I do things a little bit matchy, and if you do everything matchy, you don't have the pop. And so I always have to think, okay, does this pop? I don't want it to pop too terribly, but enough so that you notice it and it doesn't blend in with the background. And I'm sure there's always exceptions to that rule too. So the one color I did not grab, of course, is the green. I need to grab a green because I really do want these all colored. So that's what that looks like when you color them in. It does make them pop. I am going to go grab a green because I really think that needs to be completed, and I'll be right back. Here's a good example of what I meant. I went to go pull 2 colors, right? And the colors I picked was, this is aquamarine and it's 905. And this one is muted turquoise. So now muted turquoise, to me, goes perfectly with this color. Maybe it's easier to see it this way. But this one would make it pop. So I tried both of them. I'm going to show you so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so this is the muted color. Now if I'm going to color this in, yes, it shows up, right? It does show up. But if I use this color, it makes it pop. So you could even do a little bit of each if you wanted. But I'm going to go with the one that makes it pop a little bit more so that it does show up. I do want it to blend in with what I'm doing because the stuff on top is not really bright, but I did want a pop of color. And it really doesn't take long to color these in at all. Now you could take more time and make it so that the bottom of the leaves are darker than the top, but for what's gonna be shown. Not all that important. And actually, I kind of like this, just this look of this without all the stuff on it anyway. Very simple. These stamps from the thank you set are very good in terms of being essential, adding to what you're doing. So anyway, that's what that looks like when you're finished coloring. And now we can do some of our building. Pull this up. And so the first thing that I would do is bring this, so you can see how you can see them, is bring this back in to where that should be. I want to get that as close to the edge as possible. I also want this opening where I want everything to be set up. And this is still in the center. So that's my plan. And I should be good to go. So what I do, there is a lot of little pieces behind here, but I go ahead and use this glue that usually works pretty good for me. I don't like to hold it over in case my glue decides to spill over. Okay, there we go. And it doesn't have to have the glue on all of the little bits on the outside, unless you like it that way and you don't like any, I call it freedom for the die. I like it when it's not completely glued down. I like it that it has that little bit of, I don't know, 3D if you want to call it. I don't know what you call it, but it's just not totally glued down. Now there's always a chance that if it is going to be mailed or someone's going to have it in a place that could get pulled up, but usually that's not the case. All right, so of course I'm not going to get this exactly the way I just showed you because that's not how it goes for me, but we'll do the best we can. All right, I think that looks centered. I think that can be, I can commit. Okay, here we go. So now for the tricky part. These pieces that I've glued together, and I put the pine cones on top. I'm going to see if I can try to get those back together the way I did them. So yeah, this is my tape I have on top of this one. Carefully take that off. And what I can do is leave it just this way, flip it over. I think I'm going to leave that, well maybe not. I'm going to take this piece off. I don't have to do it this way. I could just put it on the way I want to. I'll just leave it like that. All right. So, because I can take that tape off. All right, so I want both these pieces to have glue on them. The one that's underneath I do still. But I just have to have an idea of where they're going to go. And then I can add more glue if I want. All right, I am going to lift up this other piece once I get this on. All right, so I want that kind of like to be again in that opening, and I want it to be balanced with the word, so that will work. So I can commit to that one. Now I'm going to lift this one up with the tape. Keep those together. And put glue on them. But I can take that tape off now. Whoops. And of course I took it apart. I think that'll still work. We shall see. Obviously I'm overlapping. There's a little bit there. Trying to keep that off the edge. That's the way I must have done it, yep. Okay, so the next thing, I'm not going to put the pine cones on yet because I decided I am going to put, I'm going to try to test this out. I did not. I'm going to put some ribbon on, and what I found was some purple ribbon that kind of matched with the background. And I think in one of my other videos, I showed you how I make my bows. But if not, I'll show you in this one too. So basically, I just figure about how big I want my loop to be, and I want to have enough of a tail. I don't want a huge tail because I always cut it off. Just depends on how much of a tail you want. And oh, for this I should really tell you I'll tell you how long I did this one. It's never the same because I can always cut it off. All right, so 7 to 18, about 20 inches. So that piece the piece I'm using is about 20 inches. All right, so again, we'll start over. Have a loop and a little bit of a tail. And all I do is I go back and forth. I'd like to have 3 loops on each side. And I hold it with my thumb and my bottom and my finger underneath. So 3 loops on that side. And then 3 loops on that side. So I know there's easier ways to do that. It's just how I do it. And then I try to straighten that up so it's a little bit, although it does always change. And obviously this piece is longer. So now I've got my pieces together, right? I'm holding it so you can see the 3. That one can come down a little bit. All right, so now I take thread, just regular sewing thread, and I again put that underneath my thumb right there, and I'm holding it in the back with my other finger, and I just wrap that around that center piece, and I don't let go. And the thing that's nice about this, you have to pull it tight, but not too tight. You'll break your thread, but tight enough so it starts grabbing that. And I gotta move that over. Starts grabbing that ribbon. And you see how it pulls that piece up? I just keep pulling it back down until it gets to where I want it, and I just do it several times, and I break it off, just like that. And that's my center. You can see, like I said, it's longer than what it's supposed to be. And I don't care if it's not perfect, all these, because to me, things aren't always perfect. So that's going to be my bow, but I like to have the knot in the center, so I cut an extra piece. It's probably like 2 inches long. It can be longer. Whatever works for your fingers. And you're just going to make a knot. Tie a knot. Right? All right. That's your knot. You can use either side. You can use that side if you like it, or you can use that side if you like it. Whichever side, just pick. And then I get some glue dots. You know those glue dots everybody used to have all the time? Well, yeah, I got tons. But this one's big, and because I have a big one, I cut it in half. And that goes in the center. Well, actually, I take that back. I figure out which side I'm going to use, and I think I'm going to use the other side. I put that in the middle of the back, what I consider the back, right? And then I bring that back up. This is going to be the front of my bow, and right over that thread, I put that knot with that glue. And that's what that looks like. All right, so I need to get these tails to go to the back side. So what I usually do so the tails don't show is I do the bottom one first and have it go up. So I turn your bow around. I just cut that one piece in half I can still use on this side, if it's big enough. And again, I'm going to put that right back on the back of the bow and pull this piece, that would be the bottom, back up. Now that hangs over the top. I don't want it to do that because I don't want it to show. So I'm going to trim that back. All right, to cover that up, I'll show you. See, I did the bottom piece. I pulled that underneath, right? So this piece needs to go over the back now. So I'm turning that over, and I'm going to put that on top of that piece. And then I just grabbed a whole one, so it doesn't matter. Okay, right? And then I'm going to pull that piece and put it right on top. All right, so that little piece underneath there is still hanging lower than what I want it to. It's not that significant, but I don't like it. So I trim that away. All right, so now I have my bow, but again, these pieces are longer than what I want, but I'm not sure until I put it on. So I'm going to put my bow on like that, and then add my pine cones, I believe. I want to see how that will work. And I think that'll work with the pine cones. Yep, so I'm going to take another piece of glue. Got. Now you don't have to do it with a bow at all. It looks fine without a bow. With just the pine cones. So I'm going to do my bow a little bit to the side so it doesn't go over my sentiment too much. Yeah, that'll work. All right, so I know that I don't want my bow to be that long. I'm not sure if I want the tails to go the other way. I think I do. Okay, so my tail's going to go that way. It's going to be a short tail, and then I got to do this tail to match it somewhat. I never do things perfectly. All right, so we have our bow, right? So now we got to figure out where we're going to be putting these pine cones. And I think I like that one there. I'm going to kind of like do, you know, how you do flower arranging. Not really sure. It's not how I had it to begin with because I didn't have a bow. That's okay. I don't know, I really think I need something down below, so hold on. Alright, so I'm going to look at that, see how that looks kind of funny. Don't know if that needs to be on top. Hold on. Well, I know I want to put these up here. Yep. And I know I want to put these down here. Or at least I want to put one of them down here. So I know I want to do that. Just not really sure about this bow. I like the bow. I'm just not sure how I want to do the bow. That might work. And that's how I usually get my arrangement. I have to sit there and figure out, okay, so I do have an extra little one, which I was hoping I did. Okay, that's gonna go. Okay. All right, let's look, see. I don't know if I like both of those down here. It makes it look too symmetrical. I'm not into the symmetrical thing. All right, I think that's gonna work. So, that's how I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna glue these pieces down. Sorry it took me a while to figure that out. I did like it without the bow, but I also like it with the bow. And plus, if you want to go back, you can see what it looks like without the bow, and if you prefer it that way, you could actually do it that way. Just take a screenshot, and then you can do it that way. I did take a picture of it, so I can even share that too as far as I go. I will share the picture of it without the bow at the beginning. It's before, though, I glue anything down, but at least you can see it. That's a little bit more by itself. At any rate, you could really make a really nice wreath with this magical hollow, and just add the pine cones to it. I'm sure you could put something else over here in this opening besides a bow, but you can do, like I said, the pine cones. But I really like I like the foliage that goes, that I added to it, but you could even use this as foliage and make it a different color and just cut it into pieces. But I really like how the foliage looks. Let's see. I'm going to get this piece glued down on top of those. So these go first. All right. And then we have the big one. Actually, this is the medium size. And you could even do it all of small ones. That would be really pretty, I think, too. I think it needs to go that way. Okay. All right. So I think that is like if you want the bow or if you don't want the bow, you have a choice. There's lots of choices you have. You don't have to do it this way at all. But just kind of like try to give you an idea of what you can do with that magical hollow and some of the stamps. Pinecones work really well, even though you had a fussy. I had a fussy cut them. I think it worked well. The other thing that I would do is if you want to add any type of sparkle, I have this the Pentel Sparkle Pop glitter pen, and you can just go in here and highlight the tips of all of these. On here it doesn't show up as great as it does in real life, but it gives you your sparkle, and it actually is kind of nice. Now you could also add snow sparkle to your magical hollow wreath part. I think that would be really pretty with some snow. And you could use use texture paste that has glitter in it, like I did for the snowflakes in another video I did. You just mix your glitter in with your texture paste and you have really pretty snow. All right. So I'll show you this a little bit closer, see if you can actually see the glitter on this, because I always think it's pretty when pine cones have glitter, a little bit of glitter, and snow. It looks like snow usually. So let's look at that, see if you can see the, I think you can. You can see the glitter on that. Yeah. So just think of all the things you can add to it. This is just a really quick video, sort of, for you to see what you can do with the Magical Hollow, the pine cones, and some of the thank you stamps from Fairy Hugs. Also, Tutti Designs is is available, I believe, at the Fairy Stamper store. So if you want to check that out also. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll have all the information down in the description.